How
Hey,
you
hey,
doing?
hey.
How you doing? Hey, great to see you all again and to join. Thanks for joining us for another episode of WTF Talks. Work. This is a spot where Hannah and I come and we talk with other business owners, other business leaders. Sometimes it's just the two of us, and we just talk about work and what's it like out there in the world. And we want to give really truthful, complete conversations about it, and we want to work hard at it. So our WTF is if you don't know, our WTF is work hard, tell the truth, and finish the job. And so we're going to talk about work in light of those three principles. So today, Hannah and I want to kind of just turn the dial back a week or two. I guess it was 2 weeks ago now. Was it 2 weeks ago now? Was it a week ago? I can't remember. My whole life's a schmozzle.
Yes, last
Um,
week I was nearly on death row, just trying to survive from the illness that I caught from Expo Camp. So last week feels like it was like a wash in some ways. I'm like, oh my gosh, I blinked and the week was over. So I feel like it was just 2 days ago, but it really was nearly 10 now. So
Yeah. So about 10 days ago, Hannah and I met up in Montreal with um, two of our recruiters, and we went to this amazing event called Expo Cam. If you're in the trucking industry and you've not been to Expo Cam, you need to go to Expo Cam. It is a great event with lots of wonderful people. They're very patient with my uh, poor, non existent, really almost. If I could like have a less than zero equation on my French skill, that would probably be it for me. But I've always found the people at Expo Camp to be very welcoming and helpful to me, and lots of other people that don't speak English there too. So I saw James Blake. Uh, I saw. Um, I made fun of um,
too many people.
lots of people who weren't there. And we didn't have an exhibit booth this time. We've had an exhibit booth in the past, but this time we decided just to go and walk the show and connect with some of our customers that were there.
They were
And so,
downtown. They had too many booths. They had a wait list.
right, right. So,
Crazy. Good for them.
Kathy Chorus, way to go. Great event as always. She always puts on a good event and lots of opportunities. And I got to say, like initially, we showed up around lunchtime on the Thursday, and we couldn't understand how quiet it was until I remembered that it was lunchtime. And when all the people from lunch came back in at 1 o'clock or 1:30, um, man, the place was jumping, wasn't it?
Yeah, but not in a bad way. Like I've definitely been to a couple of these events where it's like, oh my goodness, absolutely love to be here, but not love to be in this crowd. And it's like you're just kind of like inching your way through the,
Shuffling
I'm so
through.
sorry, excuse me. Like let me just like barely trying to put, I don't know, maybe this is I'd actually love to know your how you do this, but like as a younger female, sometimes I'm like just hand on the back of a shoulder. I'm like, it move please, like hello. But I
Yeah.
know I can't even imagine being a man and trying to be like spatially aware and navigate through crowds like that. Or maybe you're
There's a
just large
part of
enough
me.
that people see you coming and so you don't have to and they just
Yeah, and
move.
I'm loud enough that people hear me coming. And so it is an awkward thing. I've been to lots of industry events. How many times have I told the story about me going to the Ontario Trucking Association conference and being so nervous about being there and not having, this was like in our first 5 years of business when I didn't know the industry that well and still making relationships. But I would go and I would like walk from one side of the room to the other side of the room and find the bathroom over there and go in and wash my hands and then walk back across the room and hope to catch someone's eyes and to start a conversation, but often chickening out and ending up in the other bathroom on the other side and do the same routine again. I was seen a lot, but I didn't talk a lot in those days. But
Oh, it's funny. You know what though? Like that, I mean, just would have been the nature of not necessarily knowing how to integrate yourself into that room, but like to continue to show up even with that level of angst inside of you
right?
would be that's impressive. Good for you.
Right. And so, like, I remember going to those events and seeing guys like Mike McCarron and Scott Smith and Scott Tilley and
Being like, I want
like
to be
lots of,
friends.
I want to be friends so bad. And, now 20 some years into the business or 20 years into the business, and, um, we've built good relationships with lots of people like that. And I'm so thankful for those relationships and what it means for me to show up at an event and have people want to talk to me. Like that's um, it's just and the transportation industry is so welcoming. Like my fears were not well founded, but I
Hmm.
didn't know how to get over it. And so I was actually listening to a podcast today about confidence and how confidence ebbs and flows. And anyways, we can talk about all that later. Um, but we were talking about Expo Cam and kind of what we saw at Expo Cam. And you talked to a client, a potential client who is looking for 150 drivers.
Yep, I actually talked to them again today, and it was 189.
189, and that doesn't suck. We'd be happy to help companies that are in that situation. And so it's always good to reconnect with our clients and kind of,
It was interesting to gauge the environment, just understanding everything that's going on with the tariffs right now and the pending, like, let's hold off and wait so we can learn what's going on. It was really interesting just to see so many people, so many customers who are in this stage of trying to make decisions as all of this is going on and really what it's doing to all of them. And so it was a curious time to be in Montreal in the cold, in the snow. It was a fun time to be there. It was curious to be there with everything that was going on, just with like the economy
and,
and government and everything, but and
and
also just like we're so many years removed now from COVID. Like we're not in this post-COVID world anymore. We're just world. Like this is just we're just back to normal. And I feel like that's
right.
finally setting um and stabilized kind of across more markets, which has been really nice too. So, but
I
yeah,
think
nice
that's
to
really true. I think that's really true. So all in all, I would say that the Expo Cam was great, and that the team that put it together
fabulous.
was amazing. But you had an interesting interaction there that showed that some people still suck. And so I'd like to talk with you about that. Um, so I left the show on Thursday, and Hannah and Ella went back to the show on Friday. And you were kind of walking the show and talking to a lot of people, and you know a lot of people in the industry too. But some guys that you didn't know asked if you would take their picture.
Yeah, so it's really interesting the lineup at which this had happened because just maybe 20 minutes prior, we had been having a conversation with a different, would love for you to be a customer, not a customer yet, but hope day one day. But we were having a conversation with this guy about just the concept of the transportation industry and what it looks like and how it's changed so aggressively. And he was talking about the last 2 decades because that was his experience, and I was just referring to the last decade because that's what I have experience in. But we were talking about, oh my gosh, just some of the insane trade shows that we went to a decade ago where every single booth that you passed had a booth babe and everything was revolved around how do you show the glitz and the glamour and get people in, and just how it was upsetting that there was still somebody there at the show that had some booth babes and evidently booth babes, like not, and I use that
not
term as
not
the old.
brilliant transportation geniuses, but people that are there to draw attention to and draw people into conversation that would then get passed off to people that were more transportation knowledgeable.
Yeah. And so we were just talking about that was unfortunate and surprising in 2025 that that's still going on. And I'm not completely shocked because I don't think that I've been to a large industry event where I haven't seen that. But I was hopeful that it would be gone by now. And so, anyways, we were talking about just the frustration of what that looks like in this industry and that it hasn't completely come to an end. And not that we'll ever necessarily see this, I mean, just gender gap come to an end in this industry, but that it's still so prevalent and to that degree. And so, anyways, we were having this conversation, such a phenomenal conversation. Walk away. less than 20 minutes later, less than 10 booths away. Well, we're now standing at a truck, looking at a truck, we're climbing in it. I'm teaching Ella all about the 3 points of climbing in.
Okay.
It was so much fun and great. Climb out, stand down, and this guy looks over at me. He was like, "Hey, hey, hey, can you come here? Can you help me with this photo?" And the first thing that I think of course, absolutely. You see a young person who presumably knows how to use technology. Let me take your photo for you. People would get like I think young females get asked pretty regularly to help people with photos. It's like when you see a family and you're at Disney, you want to ask the teenage daughter to take your picture because she's probably got the most experience with the cell phone that you're using. And I think that's a pretty normal and fair assumption. So, anyways, I was like, yeah, of course. I stepped over and I went to go take the phone from him so that I could take a photo. And he's like, no, no, I want you to get in the picture with my friend. And I just kind of was
That's
like,
weird.
sorry, I don't understand. And he's like, yeah, you and your friend, can you get in the photo? I want to show my friend that he's got game. And this was a coworker, not a friend. They weren't random drivers walking through the show. They were people who were exhibiting
Salespeople.
at the show. Yeah. And I looked at him and my first response was yucky. But in a professional setting, I didn't want to say that. So the response that I had was, no, that's really weird, but I'm happy to take a photo for you if you want. But honestly, that 10-second interaction rang through my blood so hot and so mad for probably at least 24 hours. Like I was struggling to not think about it for 24 hours. And
So
then
really to it captured your mind and outlook on and really caused you to think about how objectified women are. Like use your own words on that. Like how did it make you feel in that next 24 hours?
yeah, so in the next 24 hours, I mean, it really just solidified most of the feelings that I've had about transportation and where we stand in the industry in regards to female discrimination. But it's I heard somebody say recently, and I don't remember what it was in regards to, that your appearance is the least interesting thing about a human. What
Mm,
you look like is the least, or what, sorry, I'll just talk about myself. What I look like, this, is the least interesting thing about me. And it breaks my heart that I don't know what percent it would be, but I would say much more often than not, humans are programmed to judge a book by the cover, to judge a person based on what you're seeing. And unfortunately, that's a lazy way to judge people. Like it really is just I've tried to come up with a couple other words for it, but lazy is the best thing I can think of. If
the
you
kindest.
It is like if you're judging somebody, and I hear this all the time, and every time I do, every time somebody says this to me, I just want to knock it because they go, "Oh, I have this employee. I have this new salesperson. She's beautiful." I'm sorry. What? Why? Why would you tell me that?
What's relevant about it? Like just
There
how
is
is that?
there is
Yeah.
absolutely nothing relevant about it. And but even in that sentence, in that state of, "Oh, she's beautiful." Well, beautiful is supposed to be a nice word. And so this is kind of what was rolling through my brain was in a world where employers or managers or coworkers want to compliment people. How can they compliment people in a work setting? And I kept trying to come back to because the exact same day, the exact same day, you and I and Ella and Jen, so two of our other coworkers, had all gone out for breakfast. And we had been sitting at the table and I had come a little bit late, was finishing up with a different meeting, sat down, we had our conversation, we left. It was great. The full day went on. And then at the end of the day, you pulled me aside when we had an appropriate time and you said to me, you were like, "Hannah, I just wanted to tell you this morning when you sat down, you took my breath away. Like you're just so beautiful and I'm so blessed and I just love you so much." And that was perfect. That was the very appropriate place for my father to say something to his daughter. But if you had said it when we were sitting at the kitchen, or not at the kitchen table, pardon me, but at the restaurant, I would have been pretty uncomfortable. I'm like, thanks, Dad, but We're here to be with our coworkers. And so even I say that to say it doesn't matter what your relationship is with this person. It's not appropriate for you in a
in a
work
business
setting
setting.
to be commenting on somebody else's appearance. And so I have people say all the time, but oh, well, we're like family. I don't care. You are literally my dad. And it's still inappropriate in my personal opinion. And so I would just tell
Mm.
people that it's a lazy way of building a relationship with somebody, of doing business. You know,
Yes.
if you want to, and people come back with, okay, well, what about I know that somebody's been going to the gym a lot and they look really good and I want to compliment them. That's fantastic. Compliment their dedication. Compliment their ability to follow through on something. Tell them that you're impressed that they wake up at 6 a.m. every morning, but don't mention their shoulders. Don't mention their biceps. Are you kidding me? Like that's just weird. And so that's kind of it left me in this, well, how did it make me feel? And what are the ramifications of that? And if I was somebody else, how would it make me feel in that moment? And I just kind of went through all of these things and I was like, is there ever a time when I want someone to compliment me? And it's just no. Like just my personal appearance is the least interesting thing about me. And ask me anything about anything else. But just leave the rest of it out. And so I don't know, that was my experience around that conversation and where I came to the other end of it and was able to mentally put it down. But it did, I talk about in my Gen Z presentation all of the time. You need to be careful what you say to people because the next generation of employees is very, very socially aware, very socially conscious. And when you say something to us, what you say to us will make us listen. And if it's going to upset that Gen Z because of XYZ, whatever, no matter what topic we're talking about here, whether it's physical appearance or a word that the next generation doesn't agree with using or whatever, but it will nearly blind us to everything that is to follow.
Yeah.
Because, go ahead.
That's really good to understand. And this is where I would like to, sorry, I put my thumb up there.
That's
Um,
okay.
but I really would like to just delve into when Gen Z needs to um, be considerate of the experiences of of the older generations. Like, where's the give and take to it? So, like every time I say certain words, you freak out on me, and I'm not going to say them here, even though I'd like to say them here, so people get the full effect of you freaking out. But it's not appropriate. Um, but like it relates back to the personal um, comments about your look and how attractive you are or whatever. But like I grew up in an era where literally um, famous actresses were given a number, and it became so commonplace to judge everyone on a scale. It was like it was culturally accepted, and that's one of the things I think that the Gen Zs don't understand is that when I was 10 and 12 years old, Bo Derek was known as a 10 and a 10 out of 10. And that was the measure of beauty. And society almost encouraged that judgment zone. And so there needs to be a little bit of consideration. And I think much less so on the objectification of women or objectification of men or um, personal look thing. I think that that's clearly wrong. And I'm trying to get better at it, but it's a lifetime of learning that I'm trying to overcome. And so our generation, my generation, needs to ask you to be patient with us and not impose on you a standard that is it was common in our day. And we all need to continue to get better as we get older. That's like who doesn't want to get better than they were yesterday? I want to be a better human. I want to be a better dad. I want to be a better business owner. I want to be a better Christ follower. I want to be better at everything that I do um, tomorrow than I am today, and
Okay.
continue to work for self improvement. But I also have this cultural framework from my home of origin, or in this case, the culture of origin. And culture has changed over time. And so, how do we manage an open dialogue about those things so that we're not intentionally offending you and you're not taking offense um, too quickly, that you can be patient with the process, but that we should be able to disagree. We should be able to dialogue about it respectfully and considerately of one
Hmm. Yeah, well, I think that Gen Zs are learning themselves. And so there should be no question around every human is going to make a mistake, and every human is going to pick up from the next day and continue forward and learn. And we talk all the time about you have to make the best decision with the information that you have at the time. And what I would say is that we are a different time and we have more information, that some of those words or statements or things are no longer appropriate, such as rating
another, or
a woman
harmful.
on a scale of 1 to 10, correct? And so that with new information, we just need to continue to drive it back. And I get people have habits, people have things that they've done for a very long time. But if we can all just have a transparent conversation about the fact that we are still learning, I think that that's a really good place to be. However, I would say that, and I'll relate it back to something you were talking about this morning and might be more relevant for the listeners, but we were talking about a company that we wanted to work with, and the company that or that we were talking about working with, and the rate that we were talking about working at, and they had a different company who was working at a much less significant rate than we are. And we said, okay, that's great that you have that. Love that that's available to you. I'm never going to get there, so we'll just start with that. But at that rate, understanding the background of what it means to pay for WSIB and pay for payroll and pay for vacation and whatever else, we think it's probable that they're hiring illegal people and they're paying cash. And that person goes, well, that's not my problem. And your response was, well, that means I probably don't want to work with you. And so I would say that the same situation applies. If your employer, if your whoever XYZ is, your boss, no matter what position they say, if they're coming into the conversation and they're saying, well, that's not my problem, that's probably just not the right place for you. And that's a value difference. And I would say that
I
at that
think
point, you guys need to evaluate whether you need to be in relationship and working relationship with each other.
I think that that's a really good point. Is that um, the culture that you build either attracts people or repels people, and you want to attract the people you want, and you want to repel the people you don't want. Like honestly, I want my culture to be so distinct that people that are like off put by it are like, I don't want to be here, and they self-select out of the process.
Sure.
Um, Not because the job's too hard, not because our expectations are too hard, but like maybe we're driven too much, or maybe we're too results oriented, or maybe we're not results oriented enough. And I believe that employees deserve the right, without judgment, to self-select in and to self-select out.
Hmm.
Um, but so when I'm talking to that team and I use words that are offensive to them and I laugh about it or I make a joke about it, that's showing something that may be attractive to them and may be a, a detraction for them. And if it repulses them, I need to be really careful about that, because that's, I don't want that silliness in me, because typically it comes from a, like, I want to make people laugh standpoint. Um,
Hmm.
I like to make people cringe too, but typically, I like to make people laugh. And
You're good at
so,
making me do both.
well, that's part of being my daughter, which is a whole different issue. So I just think that the open dialogue is important. And when we say that we work hard, tell the truth, and finish the job, and that these conversations are about that in a work setting, I thought this was a really good conversation today. I want to let you know I did think about saying, giving you the compliment at the table in front of the other people, because I perceived that compliment in public to enhance the compliment. Sometimes I feel like a compliment in private is not as valuable as a compliment in public. Um, but understanding who you are, I chose to hold that back for the later time when I could be private with you, and it wasn't weird for anybody else at the table.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate that. Why do you think that having a public compliment is more valuable than a private compliment?
Because it's one thing. I was talking with somebody today, and they were blowing smoke up my skirt, and I was polite about receiving it. Um, but I knew that it was a compliment with an expectation. And so often I find that compliments in private are compliments with an expectation. Um, that when someone says I love you to you, there's an expectation that you say it back. And I think that all compliments should be given more free-handedly. You get the compliment because you deserve the compliment. No intention for uh, reciprocity. Um, and you certainly didn't tell me I was beautiful. But I wasn't expecting it because I wasn't. Um, but I think that when you give a compliment in public, it not only tells that person how much you value them, but it tells the other people around that you know how to value people, and that you're honoring this person in front of them is a indication that they should appreciate or know that that person is in the
I think
highest esteem.
I think that's a phenomenal way to wrap it because tying the concept of a compliment to the concept of value is the very reason that that needs to be very careful. Because if you as a person are, and I do this all the time, let me be so clear. I love complimenting people in my personal life. I will be the first stranger to tell somebody that their pants are the coolest pants I've ever seen. I think that that's the most fun thing ever because people don't get complimented enough, and I know that. But when I don't know a human, I have no value to provide for them. So the only value that I have to offer them is a compliment, and that's fine. And I move on. Um, but in a professional setting, just so different. If you are tying a professional's value to their personal appearance, um, you're creating part of their professional value as their
Mm.
professional appearance. And a professional's value nearly never has anything to do with their
It
appearance.
shouldn't have anything to do with their appearance.
No.
A professional's value is in the value they bring to the relationship, typically knowledge based, sometimes performance based. But in a business setting, compliments should be reserved for, um, I would think, knowledge base and performance base. And so,
And
hey,
soft skills.
I really like what you said, or I really like the way you said. Like the way you said is soft skills. I like what you said is like, hey, you're smart. That was really valuable.
Knowledge. Hmm.
Um, you've been doing some public speaking and you've been enjoying that. But if someone came up to you after and said, hey, you look really good on stage, as opposed to, hey,
Lucky.
I really like what you said. You're
Hmm.
there for what you said. You should
Hmm.
be able to put a garbage bag over your head and say it as long as it doesn't muffle
Yeah. Yeah. And funny enough, I wear massive, and some people probably have noticed this, maybe not at all. But every time I go into a transportation industry room environment, no matter what it is, always huge suit, massive suit, swallow me in it. I don't want you to see me. And the last thing I want you to see, I actually just want you to hear me. But every other room I've ever gone into, I don't do that
it. Right.
because I don't feel the
Right.
need to. So, but
You don't feel that in like a human resource room, or you
no,
find that more of an issue in transportation than elsewhere?
Only in transportation. Yeah.
Oh,
Manufacturing still. I haven't had any blue collar welder type public presentations. They've been HR transportation. Ooh, I just hit the mic. I'm sorry if that was really loud. But yeah, any transportation industry room I've ever walked into, I'm immediately swallowed by whatever I'm wearing because I don't want them to see me.
great. So, just to bring this to a close, because we're longer than I think
That's
we
30
intended.
minutes.
Um, Tell us a little bit about the work that you're doing, and the group that you're with about Women's Trucking Federation,
Women's Trucking Federation of
and
Canada.
how does this conversation relate to them? And if people aren't members of the Women's Trucking Federation, should they be, and how would they be? Let's put a little commercial out for that.
Sure. Well, yes, you definitely should be. It's WTFC, Women Trucking Federation of Canada. We are a great group. I would highly recommend. We have an event called Bridging the Barriers every fall in Toronto. And then we have another one we're starting just for the first time. I'm really excited. Pardon me. I get to be the keynote speaker this year for our first one out west in Calgary. So that's this May. I would love for you guys to come. You can send me a message. I'll send you all the details. If you're a member, come. If you're not a member, come. If you want to be a member, message me too. I'll get you all the details, but you can always send me an email, hannah@bettertogethergroup.com, and I will happily point you in the direction of what you're looking for.
That's great. Hey guys, just want to remind y'all we're here to help people connect with people. And so, primarily in our work, that happens to be us helping companies hire employees and helping good people get great jobs. But honestly, if you need a guy, I know a guy. If you need a gal, I know a gal. So reach out if you need an industry reference. I'm happy to introduce you to people that I know and trust. Uh, Hope we can be a support to you in some fashion. I'm Dave at bettertogethergroup.com, and that's Hannah.
Thank you so much. Thanks for coming to WTF Talks. We'll chat next time.
See ya.